From the Daily Catch, this is The Catch Up, and I'm Emily Sachar. This episode of The Catch Up is brought to you by Hudson Solar and Battery Solutions, your local experts in energy independence. In Red Hook, Rhinebeck, and across the Hudson Valley, Hudson Solar Solutions helps homeowners and small businesses become more resilient. The only way to truly lower your electric costs is to reduce what you use or to generate your own power. Hudson Solar Solutions designs premium solar and battery systems built to do exactly that, safely and reliably. Visit hudsonsolarsolutions.com to see what energy independence looks like. This week, the first interview Bard College President Leon Botstein granted following the Justice Department's massive release of Jeffrey Epstein-related documents did not go to a national news outlet or even to the Daily Catch. He granted that interview to student journalists at the Bard Observer, the monthly campus newspaper. In recent weeks, Botstein's past relationship with Epstein has dominated the news cycle across our region, particularly after documents released by the DOJ included thousands of references to the Bard president. In a sit-down interview and during a February 12th meeting at his campus home, Botstein told the Observer he will not step down, leaving that decision to the college's Board of Trustees. He acknowledged he should have cut ties with Epstein in 2015 and proposed creating a $400,000 fund using Epstein-linked donations to combat sexual violence. Today, we are joined by two of the student editors who conducted those interviews and broke those exclusive stories. I just want to say, with a tear in my eye, how proud I am of all of you at The Observer. It's the week of March 2nd, so Luke Redgate and Micah Rajakumar, welcome to The Catch Up.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, it's
That was
an
so
honor.
nice.
Oh, great. So Luke, let's start at the beginning. How did the interview with President Botstein come about? Did you request it or did he reach out to you?
We requested it. We reached out to his assistant and Bemis. It was shortly after he sent out the initial email to the student body. And we sort of emailed his assistant saying, thanks for your message to the community. We were wondering if we could sit down with Botstein at any point this week. And she wrote us back, gave us a time, and then we came. It was very simple.
Very easy. I want you to know, Micah and Luke, it's not like that for us. It takes a lot of time. Did they say at all why they were willing to sit down with you? Did they ask for an agenda or a list of questions?
No, we sort of didn't give them any information. They didn't give us any information. We sat down with him the day after his talk he had.
Mm-hmm.
So he had already welcomed students into his home at that point, so it wasn't really addressed.
And it kind of has always been like that as well. Like they're very receptive to our requests for interviews. I think like part of it might be that they see us more of like an arm of the student body than like a major publication, and like a way to communicate with students even.
I guess before we go even further, why don't each of you tell us what your roles are at the Bard Observer and who else is at the helm of that newspaper?
Yeah, we're both co-editors. We have a lot of co-editors, actually. We have about 5.
Yeah, it's sort of 5 people who oversee everything and like arrange put everything together. And then we have like lower like staff editors and writers who like contribute and everything. But most of the securing this interview and this article was us 5 main editors.
Okay, fantastic. So Micah, you had both a sit-down interview and the February 12th meeting at Dr. Botstein's home, correct?
Yes.
Can you explain the difference between those two settings and what was accomplished at each one of those?
Yeah, I think the sit down in Botstein's home with students was definitely a little bit higher pressure. I think like emotions were very high. It was the first time he personally spoke in that very public way to students and addressed their concerns. And so we didn't go in that meeting with like a list of questions or anything that we wanted to hear him say. We kind of were just observing the environment and listening to his answers. And then our interview with him I think was much more like we had a targeted list of topics that we wanted him to like elaborate more on, which he was able to. But yeah.
And it
Okay.
was sort of, oh, sorry. It was sort of almost like in the big sit down talk, it's just because students had so much to say and so many emotions to convey that it was kind of easier for him almost to like dodge certain information with, whereas in our interview, it was less of like a conversation between two people and more of just him speaking.
Okay, great. So let's break down a little bit more about what happened in his home. So was that an observer project or was that a project that the president's office set out to say, come to my home? I had heard at some point that he does that pretty regularly. Can you just set the context for us on that?
Yeah, that was definitely not an observer project. That's been, I think it's a monthly, I'm not certain, but I think it's been a monthly like tradition for a very long time where he has an open house, like tea and cookies, invites students into his home.
Yeah, he sends out a little flyer for his tea time at his house, and it was identical to what it always is that it's sent out. It wasn't come talk to me about Epstein, it was come to my monthly tea.
Got it. And the format for those is relatively informal. And how many people typically come?
I think usually not very many people come. For this one, he was there with a few others and he had a microphone. I think they were prepared for, a bigger turnout, definitely.
But it still felt very small and very intimate. And the room couldn't house as many people who wanted to come in. They had to take two different shifts, almost like some people would be going in and some people were going out just so they could hear. But most of the people in the room could not hear.
Okay. And what was the tone of that meeting like, Micah and Luke?
Yeah, he set a very apologetic tone right away, like right off the bat, was voicing his regrets first and then listening to students voice their concerns. But the tone definitely, it became very escalated, I would say, like at a certain point. Students were feeling frustrated by his answers. Maybe they felt that like he might be like repeating things that he had just said in like his email.
There was a lot of heckling also. I remember at one point a student shouted something and then someone said, "Be quiet, let him speak." And she said, "To say what?" And everyone sort of, that was kind of the sentiment. It was sort of like he wasn't saying much, was the main takeaway and vibe in the room.
Wow. And how did Botstein handle that kind of environment, would you say?
He sort of is very much repeating the same things.
Yeah, but he did handle it in a like very calm, like professional way. Like he never seemed like offended by people's kind of.
And afterwards, when we asked him, his words were like, "I'm very impressed by the way the student body was able to convey themselves."
Okay.
And he also said he wasn't surprised and that he expected that sort of reaction.
How many people would you say in total went to his home?
Anywhere between like 60 to like 70, I would say 80.
I would say more. I tried to do like a little count of just in his little sitting room and it was over 50. And there were people like all the way outside that couldn't fit in.
A lot of people never came in. A lot of people were just kind of chanting and protesting outside. So in total, probably very high.
And were you there, Micah and Luke, as journalists as well as in your role as students?
Yeah, we didn't say anything and we just took notes.
Okay. Yeah. And that day, and then we'll move on to the interview, the formal interview. What were the most interesting or most surprising things that you heard that night in his home?
Well, one interesting thing that we heard was his sort of affirmation that the files that had been released were like the totality of his communications with Epstein. And he claimed that like very factually. He was like, those are all of my emails with him. And so that caught my attention, I guess, because if there ever were to be another release where more communication came out, that would show that there are contradictions between.
Yeah, there was a lot that was said like on behalf of the students. Like there was, I don't know, very like directly the calling for him to resign, There was one student who stated, like, we'll be known as the Epstein School if you don't resign. It was very honest communication, I thought, between the students and the president, which I was not surprised by, but it was good to see.
But he didn't announce that night that he would not resign. You broke that exclusive when you did the interview with
He
him.
did.
Oh, he did.
Well,
Okay.
I think someone shouted it from the crowd after he answered a question because it hadn't been
Mhm.
addressed yet. Someone said, "Are you going to resign?" And he said, "No, I'm
Okay.
not going to resign." That's
Pretty good imitation. Not bad. Yeah, I wish our listeners could see what you look like doing that. All right. Let's move on to the sit down. What were the main issues that you wanted to ask about, and how did you prepare that list?
I think we definitely knew we wanted to ask about Leon Black, who gave his own donation kind of like through Epstein, and how
he's an
Epstein,
intermediary for
Yeah.
Epstein.
or how Epstein was sort of an intermediary for him, basically, and did that with other universities as well. Like when he kind of like offered these access to these
We
wealthy donors.
Yeah. And we also planned on asking him about very specific lines in certain emails that he said, which I think was our way of getting him to respond to things directly. Since the email where he stated on January 4th, 2015 about, despite the recent tabloid publicity, I still want to offer you like true friendship. And we were sort of able to ask him in this specific email, what was the tabloid publicity you were referring to? Sort of in like a more direct way than the talk, so that it was harder for him to avoid things or like be vague or broad, which is how we got the most information out of him.
Yeah, I was also personally very curious about the personal consulting fee that Epstein gave in 2016 of $150,000, and how I was just curious, like, what was the reason for that donation? If it wasn't intended as a donation to the school, then it just calls into question the reasoning behind it. If it was intended to be a donation to the school, then why wasn't it just given to the school as an institution rather than Botstein? Like that in itself for me shows that there was kind of some sort of acknowledgement that his name tied to that donation would be not like kind of
accepted, or it would be flagged or looked upon if it was a public donation from Epstein to Bard.
So what did he tell you about that?
He said it was for a music consulting fee, which Jeffrey Epstein issued Botstein. And when we asked him, did you do any music consulting for Epstein? He said that he didn't do any music consulting.
Yeah.
And then he said that later on in 2016, when he donated $1 million gift, him and his wife, to Bard, Botstein did, he just used that music consulting money for his gift. So it was sort of like this secretive kind of weird way of transferring money to Bard.
And when you were interviewing him or after he made these acknowledgments, did you press on about that, or did you accept what he said and just go on with the next question?
Yeah, I think we kind of brought up this idea of how that could be seen as a kind of pass-through method of removing Epstein's name from the donation. And he was like, oh, I hadn't really thought of that, was the kind of sentiment. And he was like, oh,
that's very intelligent.
Yeah, that would make sense, or something along those lines.
Yeah, I don't know. He was hard to get straight answers from sometimes, but just presenting him with a lot of like preparedness and a lot of evidence, a lot of cases created like the right environment, I think.
So he acknowledged that he should have cut ties with Jeffrey Epstein in 2015, right? That he told you all that.
Yes.
What did he say about that decision, and why 2015 specifically? And we should remind our listeners that it was in 2008 that he pled guilty in Florida to a youth sex charge, to eliciting prostitution with a minor. And that was publicized, maybe not quite as much as the 2019 arrests, but that was out in the community and out on the internet. So what did he say about 2015?
Well, 2015 in particular was the year, I believe, that Virginia Giuffre published allegations against Epstein and Prince Andrew. And I think that was kind of like a turning point in just the sort of public perception of Epstein as more of a kind of like highly influential sex trafficker and
Yeah.
abuser of minors than he had been before.
But he definitely wasn't known for that at that. And yes, while Botstein did tell us he should have stopped communications with him right there, that was when he sent the email to him saying, despite recent tabloid publicity, if there's anything I can do, let me know. True friendship. He says he should have stopped communication with him right there, but he didn't.
Did he explain that to you?
Well, he said that he was still trying to pursue donations from him. I think around this point in 2015 is when Botstein's awareness like doubled, tripled of Epstein's crimes. I mean, it's unclear whether he knew that post 2008, since the time he was accused. But at this point, because of the confirmation we got from him in our interview, he had some knowledge while still pursuing donations. And he admits regret in that.
Okay. There's been a lot of attention paid, including just last night and early this morning, so Tuesday into Wednesday, of the idea of setting up this $400,000, possibly with interest, fund to use Epstein-linked donations that have been made to Bard to set up some kind of a donation fund to give back to victims, including possibly sexual abuse victims or something similar to that at Bard. So how did he describe that idea to you? What's your conception of how that would work?
He was very vague, I would say. When we were talking about that, he kind of just brought it up as something he might propose to the board to like create some sort of fund. It wasn't like, it didn't sound to me like he had thought about it that much.
He sort of gestured to his assistants in the room like, yeah, the funds, we're gonna make it wasn't a planned thing really. And it was also the donations from Leon Black, which take up more of the amount of funds that the fund would be.
So it would be the $250,000 donation from Leon Black and the $150,000 music consulting donation that you've just referenced. And those together with some kind of maybe interest would create this compensatory fund.
Yeah. And it was towards like, he said the words like combating sexual violence on campus. He didn't have a specific plan. And I don't even know what the fund would entail either.
And then also the trip to the island came up, if I'm not mistaken. Fill us in on that, because I think that was the first time we heard through your reporting that he maybe never went to the island.
He claimed to have a foggy memory of that trip and very much asserted that he was a guest of the Blacks, not
Leon Black and his
Epstein.
family.
That he went to meet with the Blacks to solicit a donation from them. And that Epstein was present there, though, at that meeting.
Yeah.
But
then he claims to have gotten sick and like flown home commercially, and that he was on a bungalow, didn't see anybody else other than Leon Black and his wife and Epstein. But yeah, so it's very vague, his descriptions of his visit.
And the bungalow, did you press him on that? Like, where was the bungalow? Because he's told some media that he never actually made it to the island.
Mm-hmm.
But there are records that show he was intending to go to the island, right? There are flight records that show that's where he was supposed to go, or emails that suggest that that was his plan.
I mean, he was there. Like, he claims to have no geographical knowledge of where specifically he was, but at like certain, because this came up during the open house, and he basically said I was there, but didn't know where I was and didn't see anything.
Okay. All right. So did you feel that you got straight answers? Did you feel that you got evasive answers? Like, when you left, did you do that thumbs up? Like, we just scored a big one here as editors and we're ready to rock and roll with this wonderful issue? Or did you think, not sure what we've got?
Yeah, I think it was a kind of, I'm not sure what we have moment where a lot of his answers seemed to be things that he had already said in the open house or in his email that were kind of maybe not evasive, but yeah, definitely not revealing more than we had already known. But a few things did prick our ears, such as the statement about Virginia Giuffre and his knowledge of that, which we hadn't, known about previously.
And what specifically did he say about that we should make sure our listeners track with?
He said that he was aware of the allegations against Prince Andrew, who was who's now incarcerated, and Jeffrey Epstein, which, she accused them of solicitation, of like childhood abuse. And he sort of emailed Jeffrey Epstein saying, despite the recent tabloid publicity, offer you true friendship, and sort of having him stating to us that this was something he was aware of sort of shifted a lot of, I think, the general awareness surrounding his relationship with Epstein.
Okay. So after these interviews and the publication last Friday of your issue in the Bard Observer, what has the reaction been on campus from students, from faculty, from administrators?
Yeah, it's been very supportive, I would say. People are very receptive to it, and I think appreciate the student perspective and our coverage.
Yeah, I don't know. Anytime I put a stock somewhere, it's gone within a few hours. I think people are really, I think especially for students, because it's like we feel so disillusioned by our school ability to communicate directly. We feel so like it's not transparent. I think having an outlet like this where we can read from other students and from us how, I don't know, the truth, like the facts for our institution, I think people think it's very special, which is good.
Normally, Luke, when you put down a stack of papers, are they gone quickly?
Not really. We have like about 600 downloads of our digital version of our newspaper, and our last issue has 45. So yeah, it's pretty, this is kind of an outlier. I think the student body is an awareness of the Observer, but not the type of relationship with this issue yet, which is good.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten interviewed on our tennis pieces in November or anything.
You haven't been a regular guest on the Daily Catch podcast.
Definitely not.
All right. Well, Luke and Micah, thank you so much for joining us. We are so proud of your diligence in pursuing this story for the benefit of all your readers and all of our readers and our listeners too. I hope we've given some really exciting uplift to your issue. And as we wrap up, a big thank you to our sponsor, Hudson Solar and Battery Solutions. If you've been thinking about solar, especially after the last big power outage, now's a good time to explore that. Visit hudsonsolarsolutions.com for more information. So that concludes the catch-up. Thanks to Matty Rosenberg, Jen Hammoud, and Esther Martell at our partner Radio Free Rhinecilff for their help in producing this episode. We'll see you next time.